Before we begin, type in the comments where you are watching from. While you do that, imagine a melody so hauntingly beautiful that strangers who share no common language suddenly wipe their eyes without knowing why. Music holds a power that logic cannot restrain. It can carve tunnels through memory, stir longing that has no name, and whisper stories that history books forgot. Today we explore the journey of a Filipino song performed in an American concert hall, and how one performance dissolved cultural borders and brought an entire audience to tears and stunned silence. The story begins with a young Filipino vocalist named Lucia Santos. She grew up in a coastal town filled with fishermen, church bells, and serenades during festival nights. Her earliest memories included her grandmother humming a lullaby wrapped in ancient folk phrases. Nobody knew where the lullaby came from. It simply existed, carried through generations like a family heirloom made of sound. Lucia never imagined that this melody would one day reverberate through a grand concert hall thousands of miles away, drawing tears from strangers who had never stepped on Philippine soil. Lucia's talent was discovered by a community choir director who noticed her voice during a school performance. The director convinced her parents to let her join a youth ensemble that toured in nearby cities. Audiences loved her clarity and warmth. Her voice felt honest, did not overpower. It invited listeners to feel something without force. A visiting American conductor attended one performance and approached the ensemble with an offer. A cultural exchange program was organizing a concert in New York featuring young artists from different nations. Lucia was chosen to represent the Philippines. Preparation for the event required love, discipline, and research. The choir director wanted Lucia to bring something authentic rather than imitate Western repertoire. They selected the old lullaby that her grandmother once sang during stormy nights when the roof shook and waves pounded the shore. The song told of longing, separation, and hope disguised in gentle phrases. The language was Filipino. The message was universal. Lucia spent weeks refining breath control, tone, and diction. She did not treat it as a performance. She treated it as remembrance. When Lucia arrived in New York for rehearsals, she found herself surrounded by singers from Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America. Each performer carried melodies from their homeland. Rehearsals sounded like continents singing across a single room. Conductors adjusted arrangements while translators explained lyrics. The purpose of the concert was cultural conversation rather than competition. Lucia felt nervous yet excited. She believed deeply in the lullaby's emotional gravity. She hoped the audience would feel something even if they did not understand the words. The day of the concert arrived. The hall filled with families, diplomats, teachers, musicians, and curious attendees. Lights softened. Cameras blinked. Programs rustled. The event began with lively ensembles from Brazil and Senegal, followed by a delicate piano piece from Finland. Each performance showcased identity and craft. The applause was enthusiastic. When the conductor finally introduced Lucia as the final act of the evening, the room quieted into anticipation. Her petite frame and youthful face gave no hint of the vocal power hidden in her chest. Lucia stepped onto the stage holding a single microphone. There were no backing tracks, no dramatic staging, no extravagant lighting. The conductor believed nothing should distract from the human voice. The first notes emerged slender and soft, like a breeze touching rice fields just before sunrise. Textured vowels and lilting consonants carried the intimate cadence of Filipino speech. People leaned forward instinctively. They did not know the meaning, yet the sound stirred something ancient and tender in their memory. As the lullaby continued, Lucia's voice expanded without losing fragility. Images formed silently in the audience. Some pictured children being rocked to sleep. Others imagined families separated by oceans. A few remembered loved ones they had lost. The song moved like water, shaping itself to each listener's story. Spectators were no longer observing a performance. They were participating in a collective meditation on longing. Even the ushers froze in place, unwilling to break the spell hanging in the air. When Lucia approached the final phrase, her tone became almost transparent. She held the last note long enough for the hall to breathe with her, then released it with careful restraint. Silence followed, not because the audience lacked appreciation, but because applause would have felt disrespectful. It took several seconds before clapping erupted. By then many were already wiping tears from their eyes. Some cried quietly, others tried to hide it. The conductor himself bowed his head, moved by the purity of the moment. After the performance, attendees gathered in the lobby. They did not discuss technique, range, or pitch. They spoke about memory, grandparents, childhood, and longing. A woman explained that although she did not know the language, she felt the song speaking to her late mother. A young man who served in the military said the lullaby reminded him of home. A professor mentioned that the performance demonstrated how art transcends translation. Lucia listened shyly, unsure how to respond to so much emotion. A cultural journalist covering the event recorded interviews and later published an article titled "The Song That Silenced the Room." The piece circulated online and generated discussion about folk music traditions, diaspora stories, and the emotional intelligence of cultures considered distant from Western mainstream media. Many readers searched for the lullaby online, curious about its origins. Recordings did not exist beyond a few festival videos. Demand grew rapidly, and soon cultural organizations invited Lucia to record an official version. During studio sessions, sound engineers debated how to capture the lullaby's intimacy. They experimented with microphones positioned close enough to hear her breath without distortion. The arrangement remained minimal. A soft guitar doubled the melody while a bamboo flute added subtle texture. No drums, no synthesizers, no dramatic crescendos. The goal was to preserve sincerity. When the track was released, listeners commented that it felt like someone singing directly into their thoughts rather than through speakers. The release sparked international interest. Streaming platforms featured the lullaby on playlists focused on world music, meditation, and cultural discovery. Reaction videos appeared on social media. Families cried while recording themselves listening. Choir directors requested sheet music. Therapists contacted Lucia's team asking permission to use the song for grief counseling sessions. The lullaby had shifted from a private family melody into a global vessel for healing. Amid the attention, Lucia asked her grandmother about the lullaby's origin. Her grandmother closed her eyes and whispered that it came from elders who lived through war and displacement. The lullaby helped soothe children during blackouts when fear threatened to consume households. It helped mothers when fathers worked far from home. It helped communities separated by circumstances beyond their control. The melody was more than music. It was survival woven into sound. Lucia realized something profound. The American audience did not cry because the song was foreign. They cried because it was familiar in an emotional sense. The lullaby carried universal language disguised in a Filipino tongue. It spoke of love, longing, separation, and hope, themes shared by all nations regardless of geography. Music scholars called this phenomenon empathetic resonance. Lucia called it being human. Invitations arrived from festivals, universities, and cultural institutions. Lucia traveled to Berlin, Tokyo, Vancouver, and Sydney to share the lullaby. Each venue responded differently yet consistently. Tears, quiet reflections, and gentle applause followed every performance. A conductor from Tokyo said the lullaby reminded him of loss after a tsunami. A teacher in Vancouver said her students listened silently and then hugged one another. The lullaby had become a bridge between emotional landscapes. In the Philippines, news outlets celebrated Lucia as a cultural ambassador. Yet she felt uneasy with fame. She insisted that the lullaby did not belong to her. It belonged to generations who endured hardship with dignity. She described herself as a messenger rather than a star. Her humility only deepened admiration for her. Many young Filipinos felt inspired to learn folk songs from their grandparents before those melodies vanished from living memory. Documentary filmmakers approached Lucia about telling the lullaby's story. Production teams recorded interviews with historians, musicians, and elders who explained the significance of folk traditions in Filipino communities. The documentary explored how these melodies carried identity across oceans and generations. When it premiered, audiences once again cried, confirming that the lullaby possessed power beyond the boundaries of performance. Years passed, but the lullaby never faded. Weddings, funerals, schools, and cultural events featured Lucia's recording. Diplomats referenced the performance during speeches about cultural cooperation. Choirs arranged harmonies around it. A filmmaker even incorporated the lullaby into a scene depicting reconciliation between estranged family members. The song had become a thread stitching humanity together in quiet ways. Lucia eventually stood on a beach during sunrise reflecting on the journey. Waves approached the shore with gentle rhythm. She realized that music cannot erase pain, but it can soften its edges. It can remind people that they are not alone inside their longing. The Filipino lullaby that once soothed children during dark nights had now soothed an American audience inside a prestigious concert hall. It continued to travel across borders, proving that emotion understands no passport, and empathy sings in every tongue.